Hello and welcome to another episode of Soap Goes to the Oscars. This is episode 45, and I'm recording it on September 10th, 2024. And I also watched the movie this day as well. And this time it was The Thin Man. We are still in the 1934 Oscars, the seventh ceremony. So let's get into this one. This was directed by W.S. Van Dyke, screenplay by Albert Hackett, Francis Goodrich, based on the Thin Man novel in 1934 by Dashiell Hammett, produced by Hunt Stromberg, starring William Powell, Myrna Loy, Maureen O'Sullivan, Nat Pendleton, and Mina Gomble. Cinematography by James Wong Howe. I feel like I've seen his name before in this. Edited by Robert J. Kern. Music by William Axt. Production company MGM, distributed by Lowe's Inc. Released on May 25th, 1934, as a runtime of 91 minutes. So, as described by Wikipedia, The Thin Man is a 1934 American pre-code comedy mystery film directed by W.S. Van Dyke and based on the 1934 novel the same name by Dashiell Hammett. Film stars William Powell and Myrna Loy as Nick and Nora Charles, a leisure class couple who enjoy copious drinking and flirtatious banter. Nick is a retired private detective who left his very successful career when he married Nora, a wealthy heiress accustomed to high society. Their wire-haired fox terrier Asta was played by canine actor Skippy. In 1997, the film was added to the United States National Film Registry, having been deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. Screenplay was written by Albert Hackett and Francis Goodrich, a married couple. In 1934, the film was nominated for Best Picture. The eponymous Thin Man is not Nick Charles, but the man Charles is initially hired to find, Clyde Wynant. Partway through the film, Charles described Wynant as a thin man with white hair. Thin Man moniker was thought by many viewers to refer to Nick Charles, and after a time, it was used in the titles of sequels as if referring to Charles. It was followed by 5 sequels. See, production. Hammett's novel drew on his experience as a union-busting Pinkerton detective in Butte, Montana. Hammett based Nick and Nora's banter upon his rocky on-again, off-again relationship with playwright Lillian Hellman. MGM paid Hammett $21,000 for the screen rights to the novel. Screenplay was written by the couple who had been married for 3 years. Director encouraged them to use Hammett's writing as a basis only and to concentrate on providing witty exchanges for Nick and Nora. Casting. Van Dyke convinced MGM executives to let Powell and Loy portray the lead characters, despite concern that Powell was too old and straight-laced to play Nick Charles, and that Loy had become typecast in exotic femme fatale roles. Skippy played Asta, the dog of Nick and Nora. Skippy was subsequently cast in 2 screwball comedy classics, The Awful Truth and Bringing Up Baby. Filming. Film was shot with a budget of $226,408. For Powell's first scene in the film, Van Dyke told him to take the cocktail shaker, go to the bar, and just walk through the scene while the crew checked lights and sound. Powell did it, throwing in some lines and business of his own. Suddenly, he heard Van Dyke say, "That's it, print it." The director had decided to shoot the scene without Powell knowing it so that he would be as relaxed and as natural as possible. Van Dyke often did not bother with cover shots if he felt the scene was right on the first take, reasoning that actors lose their fire if they have to do something over and over. There's a lot of pressure on the actors who often had to learn new lines and business immediately before shooting without the luxury of retakes, but Loy credited much of the appeal of the film to Van Dyke's pacing and spontaneity. Powell loved working so much with Loy because of her naturalness, her professionalism, and her lack of any diva temperament. Of her, Powell said, "When we did a scene together, we forgot about technique, camera angles, and microphones. We weren't acting. We were just 2 people in perfect harmony." Myrna, unlike some actresses who think only of themselves, has the happy faculty of being able to listen while the other fellow says his lines. She has the give and takes of acting that bring out the best. The scene of Nick shooting the ornaments off the tree was added after Powell playfully picked up an air gun and started shooting ornaments the art department was putting up. Loy wrote that the biggest problem during shooting was the climactic dinner party scene in which Nick reveals the killer. Powell complained that he had too many lines to learn and could barely decipher the complicated plot he was unraveling. It was one scene when several retakes were necessary, which brought up an entirely new problem. The script called for oysters to be served to the dinner guest, and in take after take, the same plate of oysters was brought out under hot lights. Lloyd recalled that they began to putrefy. By the time we finished that scene, no one ever wanted to see another oyster. So that was a lot, but it was interesting to me. And this one was fun. This is, as it says, it's a comedy mystery film. It's not at all what I thought it was going to be. I've heard of The Thin Man, but didn't really know anything about it. I've heard of Myrna Loy. She's gorgeous, by the way. Irrelevant to the review, but just pointing out a fact. And I think it was partly she was kind of, I don't know the right way to say it, but kind of sexy because of her playfulness with him. And, they were a good pairing, and they did all 5 of the sequels together as well. So I would actually be interested in watching those just to watch them again. And, this one was a lot of fun. I think it might be my favorite of this year so far. A lot of the other movies were very good, but this one was just a lot more fun than some of the others. And it's not something you really see nominated for Oscars. Even now, like you get some nominated, comedies like Barbie or something, but that's because they've opened it up to more nominees. And again, this, maybe is another case of where that might not have happened if there wasn't 12 nominees for this particular year. But I'm glad it was, because I might not have watched it otherwise. One thing I've noticed, I've been meaning to say this in the last few episodes, and I keep forgetting, is that one thing I've noticed with this year of Oscars particularly is, a lot of these early movies are, and there were movies long before the Academy Awards came into play, but you sort of see things start to develop as far as technique and, cinematography and camera movement and stuff. I can't remember which movie it was now. I feel like it might have been Flirtation Walk. There was a scene where, the camera like followed a character out the door and then kind of down the sidewalk. And there's just something that struck me as sort of new compared to what I've seen in some of the other movies, this early on. So you can kind of see those techniques, cinematic techniques developing in these movies. And that's partly why I wanted to kind of do this in order and sort of go on this journey through all these movies, because I wanted to sort of see the progression of how things changed. And I feel like they probably have, they reach a peak at some point and then they probably start to go the other direction, with all the superhero movies and everything and coming into play. And I like those movies, but they're not winning any Oscars for Best Picture. So not yet anyway. Yeesh. But anyway, yeah, this one was great. I like this one a lot. This probably the only other movie that I could say so far that I've watched that I would actually watch again is I'm a Fugitive from a Chain Gang, which was in the last round of Oscars. I really like that one. I would watch this one again, and I think I will probably seek out the sequels as well, because they were fun to watch, that couple. So I recommend this one if you can find it. I watched this. I actually recorded this on Hulu through on TCM through Hulu. It is available on TCM, I think, but it aired on September 4th. And I just happened to see that it, like when I was looking for it, it came up as airing on that day. So I recorded it. That is how I watch it. So, another free one. Yay. This is an expensive round compared to most of the others, but so I'll take the free ones wherever I can. But anyway, that's it. Probably went on longer than I should have. I'll see you next time.